All right, now we're joined by Lisa Melenyzer, who's running for School Board District 4. So go ahead with a 2-minute introduction.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Lisa Melenyzer, and first I will say I'm not a professional candidate or professional speaker, and I filed yesterday. But I am sort of a professional Seattle Public Schools follower, if you will, pseudo-professional. I have 2 kids in the Seattle Public Schools. One is a 10th grader at Ingram High School, and he is also a special ed student, special ed inclusion. And I have a 7th grader who is at Hamilton Middle School, and next year will be joining many of our neighbors at Robert Eaglestaff Middle School. I'm a long-time volunteer, I would say, in Seattle Public Schools. I've served as a PTA president at 2 different schools for a total of 3 years, both at Whittier at the elementary level and at Hamilton at the middle school level. And I have followed the enrollment issues and the financial issues and these sort of issues for many years. And currently I work at Hamilton Middle School as the fiscal specialist, so I'm having the sense of seeing what all of the CSIP planning, which is the continuous school improvement planning, and the building leadership teams, and more of the academic and disciplinary issues, sort of from an on-the-ground perspective. And I feel like what I can bring to the school board is sort of a different view. I am educated as a lawyer. I have a really good basis for understanding systems and systems improvement, but I also really have the in-the-ground, long-term Seattle Public Schools experience to bring to the table.
Great, so now we'll go to our 4 prepared questions that we're asking all candidates for school board, and I think there should be a copy in front of you somewhere.
I did see this, yes.
Feel free to read
Turn it
along as
over.
we read them aloud. These are 2-minute answers, and Jason, will you do number 1?
Sure. What specific actions can the school board take to help assure equal educational opportunities and help close the achievement equal opportunity gap? Also, how do you see stopping the suspension expulsion prison pipeline that is affecting so many kids?
Do I get 30 seconds to consider this
2.
before you
Well,
Oh yeah, I won't start until you start talking.
Okay. This is just like the Seattle Public Schools interview process. Okay. Okay, I'm ready. So what specific actions can the school board take to assure equal educational opportunities and help close the achievement equal opportunity gap? I think this starts by being sort of the tricky question as to what the school board's role is in setting those sort of policies and how much actual work and sort of management of issues the school board can do. But I do think the school board sets the tone for what the priorities should be, and can help move the district in certain directions, sometimes by requiring the district to go through their thinking and talk through things. So more specifically, I would say, I think that one thing, if you look at what the district has done with capacity management, some of the schools in the south end have really been closed off to school choice because of an effort to keep certain schools populated. And there's sort of a tail wagging the dog situation there, I think, where people are denied some sort of educational choices in order to try to keep our capacity ship afloat, if you will. I think the district can do more in providing certain programs, like supporting that IB program at Rainier Beach, supporting more alternative programs. that are open and trying to get kids involved in those programs. I think that the district could be more maybe thoughtful in working with the levy, the city levy, people, the family and education levy. Sorry, I don't know what to say about that.
Thank you. Number 2, Nicole.
Sure. How do you view the role of a school board member in terms of district governance? Do you believe it's the role of a school board member to advocate on behalf of the public with administrative staff?
I think one of the problems that we have in the district is that families have the feeling that the district does not really respond to, it doesn't really make use of the family engagement practices that they have in place. So if you have a concern, you sort of, I think a lot of people feel like the school board is really your only place to go if you run into a wall with your school or with the enrollment, for instance, or the administrative people. So the school board winds up being a little bit of the customer service line for people who are upset about one issue or another. I do think that the school board has to play that part, and at least at this point, considering how family engagement works with the district, that's an appropriate role for the school board, because they can sort of reflect things back to the administration about how their practices are affecting people on the ground. And I think that's an appropriate role for them to reflect that back to the administration. And the school board cannot dictate everything that the administration is going to do, but it's absolutely an appropriate place for them to be. I think the district is failing a little in its family engagement, community engagement, although I do think that they are trying. And from what I have seen, the school board members who are really doing a good job do a lot of engagement with the community. And I think, to be honest, as a person who is now an employee of the school district, it's not clear to me that what is happening at the school level is making its way back up to the school board or even the high level of the district in some cases. I'm not sure that they really understand what practices that are put in place are having an effect in the schools. And so I think it's only through another party like the school board members that information makes its way in.
Liz, number 3.
Well, what are your priorities, and how do you propose SPS finds the necessary funds to address the classroom infrastructure needs of the district? Please specifically address the needs of Seattle's growing north downtown population for an elementary school, as well as other neighborhoods in Seattle.
Did anyone answer these correctly? These are big questions.
There's no right answer.
Yeah, right? All right, 1 second. Okay. So as regard the necessary funds how do they capture the necessary funds to address classroom infrastructure needs and the needs for new capital development, that is clearly something that is needed desperately, is more capital development as well as more money to maintain the buildings that we have, and to I had a child who was at the Lincoln building as it's in its temp capacity. I went years ago to a BEX meeting to ask them to put more money into Whitman years and years ago, personally, I think, we need the state to produce the money that it should be producing to adequately fund schools across the state. And that's an obvious one. I do think that that people should be working with the city, and I do think that the mayor and the city council should be working to create developer impact fees to help fund some of these items, because it's just a necessary part of the growing city. Seattle was clearly not prepared, and Seattle Public Schools are clearly not prepared behind the 8 ball on developing on time to satisfy to satisfy our needs. So I think developer impact fees to help fund new schools, the state money, and you know, I'm sort of open to new ideas and further research about this.
Great. Robert, number 4.
What do you think the district's testing policy should be?
So, as regards testing, and I assume by this you're referring to standardized testing, you know, I have opted my children out in the past. I have one who just took the SBAC this week, so I have done both personally. And I have looked at the scores as well. As a person who's interested in this kind of thing, I've looked at the scores and tried to figure out how do they track from year to year. And I just don't think, I don't think that these kind of tests where you take them at the end of the year, I don't think they give us the kind of real information we need at the local level to serve our kids. I don't think it's the best way to do it. They're expensive to purchase those test licenses. They're expensive, I can tell you, as having worked in a school this year, they're expensive to administer those tests. It's a huge time suck, and it throws, you know, at Hamilton, it's 3 weeks of testing, 1 week for each grade level, and it throws the sort of school vibe out of whack, and now it's mid-May and you're going back to academic, you know, consistency. I just don't think, I don't think it gives us that good of information, and I don't think it's worth the cost, and I wouldn't totally throw out the idea of testing of some sort. I'm not sure every school can be its own island, but I think the system that we currently have is not working, and it's not worthwhile.
Great. So now we will move on to follow-up questions. These are 1-minute answers. I have one, and then Jason and Robert. So you mentioned that you are a school district employee. I'm wondering if you could sort of expand more on what kind of perspective that gives you, and also would that present any sort of conflict of interest where you'd have to recuse yourself in any school board votes?
I suspect, and this is part of this being a big decision for me, and a reason that I waited pretty long to file, is that I suspect I would probably have to leave that position in order to do this. Not until an election, perhaps. I would think I would go through the campaign. But I do think that it could be a problem with actually serving as a school board member. So
if you won, if required, you'd probably leave your position.
I would, and I would tell you right now that I would feel really sorry about that, because I really enjoyed working in the school. It gives me much more insight into things like testing and sort of teacher evaluations and how teachers work together, professional learning communities, and those sorts of things, school administration. So I think it's really been an excellent thing for me to be on the other side of school district allocations and seeing the master schedule and seeing how teachers are riffed and so forth.
All right, Jason, then Robert, then Liz.
One of the challenges, I think, for the board in making its recommendation is we have so many candidates that filed so late. So this day is just full of a ton of candidates, and we don't have the assistance of many weeks and months of campaigning and, you know, you coming before the membership and whatnot to news stories or websites to look at or anything, right? So we're really putting a lot of emphasis on the interview today to make our decision and recommendation for next week's meeting. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you differ from your opponents insofar as you know much about what your opponents stand for.
Filed yesterday.
Yes, right. Or, you know, something about your personal experience. You've talked a little bit about the work that you do and the unique perspective that brings, but maybe a little bit more about your PTA history, because I think that is a unique perspective that you're bringing to the table.
Sure.
Just give us a little bit more about who you are as a person.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
So I am, as I said, the parent of 2 children, one of whom over the years has accumulated some different diagnoses, shall we say, and has some special needs. So that is a part of my experience of the world. Is I have one child who is qualified for HCC and the other one who is also special ed. So I have a different perspective than many parents probably. But I started as the PTSA president in Whittier when my child was a second grader as a co-president. And I actually brought you a link to an article from Finneywood about a letter that I wrote then in 2012 with a friend to the school district, asking them to hold off on moving Whittier's special ed developmental preschool because of what was purported to be capacity reasons. So even back to 2012, I was kind of involved in looking at capacity and advocating for kids and advocating for school communities. So that's a big part of who I am. I come from a family of teachers, and I just have a long abiding interest in the subject and in the school district.
Thank you.
Robert and then Liz.
Same question I've asked of everybody who's running for school board today. What is your view on charter schools? And if you are elected, would you continue the district's current policy of refusing to be an authorizer for charter schools?
Am I waiting?
Sorry, it keeps resetting for some reason, but
I'm
go
not
on.
sure whether I'm waiting.
Sorry, go on.
We'll figure it out. Go ahead.
Okay. I am opposed to charter schools. I'm going to say one thing, though, is that I do have a kid who is in special ed, and there have been times over the course of his 11 years in school that I have had to pull him out of Seattle Public Schools because I felt that his needs were not being met. And those have been difficult decisions, and I had to do it. And so I'm very sympathetic to people who feel that their children's needs are not being met by what we currently have. I think charter schools are not what they're cracked up to be, and would be a huge drain on the financial resources and frankly the morale of our district. So I think that it would absolutely be a mistake to become an authorizer, and I'm opposed to charter schools. I really would like to see better district management and better offerings for special ed students and alternative schools is what I would like to see.
Great. Liz and then Clayton.
So I'm wondering, we mentioned the state funding. And
Yes.
that's always the elephant in the room, right?
Sure.
It's getting that state funding all the way through. And I'm wondering if you would be opposed to using the current cannabis revenue towards state funding for the schools for general operations.
I don't think I would be opposed to that. Has been deemed a legitimate practice in our state, and I don't have a moral reason that you could not do that. I come from the state of Pennsylvania, where we have an income tax, and we have also property taxes, and I think many of the states do, and I would prefer to see a systemic answer to some of these things. It's a statewide answer, and not another little nail in the wall sort of holding things back, like as though another small tax on soda or on cannabis or whatever. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I would like to see a large statewide answer to school
Yes.
funding problems,
That's what I mean.
as opposed to a little chunk here, 2 cents on the soda, that sort of thing. That's what I'm saying.
Great. Clayton, final answer. Or final question.
Did I not answer that?
You-
She looks confused.
So we'll almost be done. We can chat off camera.
Okay.
Clayton, final question.
Got it.
You mentioned that your child's needs were not being met in Seattle Public Schools, and you had to take them out at various times or once at least. Can you elaborate and tell us something in detail about the ways in which the specific reasons you had for making that decision?
Mm-hmm.
Goes to many other questions we've.
Sure. So without wanting to make my 16-year-old a campaign issue directly, I will say that initially we took him out after kindergarten because that was a particularly tumultuous year at that elementary school where there were multiple principals and turnover, and it was a very difficult year for a lot of people. There were 30 children in that kindergarten class and a brand new teacher who was wonderful, but my child is not a kid who can roll with the punches, and had some sensory issues. And when I tried to get the special ed sort of the meeting in order, I was told, oh, it's going to be many more months. And at that time, I panicked as a new parent in this district and took him out and enrolled him in a private school that had much smaller classroom sizes and was offering more stability than what Seattle Public Schools was offering in elementary schools. So that was one thing. In middle school, we also took him out for a semester of language arts and social studies. And he has some learning disabilities as well as being on the spectrum. And we just found that we were spending time and money taking the kid to a private tutor and also having him be in study skills classified in the middle school and dealing with the teacher, and it was just, the intensity was far too much. We weren't able to resolve it in a timely manner, and so we ended up opting him out when he was having chest pains on the way to school.
All right, so we are about out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll catch up with you.
Go on. You're good. Go on. Start.
So in closing, I would just say that I do not have, I'm not coming to you with a professional career in education policy, and I'm not sort of a career politician. My interest really in running for office begins and ends with Seattle Public Schools, because I have been heavily involved as a parent and volunteer, now an employee, for 10, 12 years, and I feel like I really have some good insight and can bring something different to the table.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.